Okay, so what we're going to be doing today is continuing on with the National 4 ENF 1.1 and the last part, which is gradient. So what is gradient? Gradient is basically a measurement of how steep a slope is. So if we're looking at the diagram following, we have a horizontal line and we have a vertical line. And from this we can get a formula for the gradient to use. And we'll use m equals, now m is a special letter we use for gradient in maths, and always make sure you're using that for gradient. And it's simply the vertical over the horizontal, and that simplifies down to m is equal to v over h. Okay, last point to make is just to remind you that vertical lines are perpendicular to horizontal lines. What does perpendicular mean? It means at 90 degrees to one another. Okay, so you can see here that we have a positive gradient, and that is going up from left to right. And similarly, we also have the negative gradient, which is going down from left to right. Okay, let's have a look at this part here. This is probably more Nat 5 content, but it's still relevant. It's just to basically say that in a single straight line, the gradient is the same. Okay, so the gradient between point 1 and 2 is going to be the exact same gradient as point 3 or 4 because they are on the same straight line. Okay. So just to clarify, m is the same at both of these sets of points in one continuous line. Okay, a quick explanation about how steep versus shallow lines work. So basically, if you have a steep line, which you can see here, then you can see that v is clearly bigger than h. Okay, now this is basically saying v is greater than h. Then m, our gradient, is greater than 1. Now that's going to be obvious because if v is greater than h, then this is a top-heavy fraction. Okay, so we're now looking at the shallow slope. It's clear to see here that h is much bigger than v. So when v is less than h, then basically this says that we have a fraction. So it's a fraction which isn't top-heavy. Okay, now I've done this. This basically means that we're ignoring if it's a negative. Final situation is where you have a situation where your horizontal and vertical are both the same size. In that case, when v is equal to h, then our gradient is 1. Now, if you think about it, if v and h are the same number, then any number divided by itself is just 1. Final point, when m is equal to 0, you have a horizontal line. When m is infinite or undefined, you have a vertical line. Please pause this screen and take a note of this question in your jotters. This is the one I'm going to be doing as your example. Okay, so here's the example. You see here, you've got your 4 and your 80. As ever, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to write your formula. That is m is equal to v over h. Afterwards, as ever, sub your values in. That is 4 over 80, which simplifies down to being 1 over 20. And in this case, we're going to put it into a decimal, 0.05. Now, the reason why we want to put it into a decimal is so that you can make comparisons with other gradients. Okay, because the questions you're going to be asked is to make the comparison between one gradient and another gradient.